From Studio 3 at Buzz TV, it's The Horse's Mouth with Tom McManus.
All right, welcome into another edition of The Horse's Mouth here at Tommy Mac's, of course, at my bar, where everybody is welcome to have a seat, grab a beverage, and tell their story. Brought to our good friends at Branded Brewski and right here at Client Focused Media. Jim Wenzel is here. He's with Pro Cipher Protective Services, and we're going to talk about all of that and more. Let's welcome him in to the show. Jim, great to have you on.
Thanks. I'm pleased.
And thank you so much for your service. Cheers to that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I know you were in the Marines for, what'd you say, 8 years served?
Yes, sir.
All right, and then you went into law enforcement.
Correct.
And now you're into what you're into.
Now we're into the private security sector.
Okay.
Within that, we're kind of in a couple of different spaces with the training, consulting, investigations, and the protective service type entities.
Okay.
So primarily now with everything kind of going on, as you've seen, there's some crazy stuff happening
Absolutely.
in the world with the healthcare industry.
Yep.
So we're seeing an uptick on that protective side. So we offer services such as social media threat analysis. So we have clients with that to monitor. So if there's any upticks are there with the clients we work with and they're moving their CEOs, CFOs around and going to particular areas.
Yep.
We can monitor those things with our protection teams on the ground.
Wow.
So we do a lot with them, and then on the investigation side, we work within the background side, helping corporate teams develop hiring practices.
Okay.
And we'll train and teach them how to do that, have a more holistic approach.
Okay.
How to do those conversations, because that's essentially what they are. It's a conversation with a purpose.
Right.
And most people miss the mark on that. So we try to do that training, develop that. We also do and dabbled in with helping when we're called and asked with missing persons, human trafficking aspects. So
good.
We get involved in it. We're not your typical investigations that does workers' comp and things like that. We're doing criminal stuff. Being all our guys are either veteran or law enforcement, veterans, retirees, investigators. We're big on working with criminal defense attorneys when it comes to they have particular cases, and we will investigate, the investigators. Just to make sure things are done constitutionally correct, because there has to be a level of accountability. And if we're not accountable to ourselves, and we're not doing anything any justice.
And this may be a dumb question. I'm just a bartender. How much of the law do all your people have to know? Like all of it, or? I know your background, so it's maybe
So everyone's going to have a good gist of understanding of the federal constitutional laws and everything else, and then it really comes down to where it's us being here in Florida. So a lot of us are from Virginia and very different states. So each state has their own state laws and constitutions. So our big thing for us is down here is we've learned and adept with those aspects of the Florida law. And within that, I've been kind of fortunate too. I have a younger brother that's a veteran who is an attorney in Florida. So and there's certain things there, there is a nuance. So there is like that phone a friend aspect of, having somebody, hey, this is what we're going at. And then I get that perspective with what he does as a lawyer and in the law with what I do. And that's how you can, get that veteran. Okay, let's create these things, because sometimes you need certain stuff to hold people accountable, or maybe adjust or tweak a law down the road too. That hey, this isn't just right. We need to do this because there's some things that aren't being properly processed.
Do you guys do any entertainment protective, like at venues or celebrity types or anything like that?
Have done those. We have done those and done different events. Unfortunately, those are one of those kind of clients we typically stay away from.
They're too demanding, aren't they, Jim?
I wouldn't say
prima donnas, and they're demanding.
The demanding, yes and no. I've done a lot with some of like the UFC side of things. Those guys are pretty good with their venues. But what you have is unrealistic expectations. And a lot of them don't understand what it is. And majority, unfortunately, too, you see with that industry is they hire buddies. They want the big, bulky guys, kind of things that really don't understand the security or the principles or foundations.
Absolutely.
And you kind of can't talk that because you're not talking the same language. So where we kind of are, we deal with a lot of the CFO, CEO, C-suite guys.
Gotcha.
Big organizations.
After what happened here.
And then we do a lot of work in and out of D.C., so we've done some work with, the congressional folks and things like that. So there's different people there we've done and worked with as well. Inauguration is going to be big, guys up there. We've augmented Secret Service and assisted them with stuff. So it's just that fine balance, in between. And that's kind of where we roll with that.
In that game, and I've never been in it, but big doesn't mean anything. Muscles, that doesn't. I mean, you got to know how to handle a situation, right? You got to know how to handle people.
It's a misunderstanding and misrepresentation of it, right? Big isn't better,
Right?
Because when you see a big guy, what's the first thing? The big guy stands out in the room,
Right.
So a lot of times we're working with clients and stuff that want to kind of go in and out,
Yep.
and they want to have a low profile, low visibility, right?
How about females? Because I've heard that they're on the uptick too.
They're in there. It's a demand.
Yep.
Finding them is difficult, but when you find them and finding good ones that are trained is great. But that's the difference too, right? So an environment, since you brought that up, Tom, is like sometimes you have a wealthy CEO and he wants you, the protection guy, to go to the park with the wife and the kids. Well, you and me kind of stand out in the park with the wife and the kids, right? As opposed to a female agent that's in there low pro, kind of would fit the role of a nanny or an assistant in things, right? So we don't want to kind of give that thing that's overpowering source of, though, that's security, because that can itself elevate a threat level, and our job is to be proactive and mitigate those things. We want to keep things as low key as possible. When nothing happens, that's a good day.
Absolutely. All right, let me wrap up with this, and I know they're asking me to wrap, but I got to ask you. So I know this idea has been thrown out there many a times. I've often wondered, why aren't schools, and I'm sure there's a lot of red tape, but hiring guys like you or companies like you to just roam the school, make sure it's safe, make sure it's protected. When are we going to wake up and communities all around the world? Look, gun control, that's a whole nother subject, but to protect our children, I don't know why our government wouldn't want guys like you, and law enforcement, military, got the background, you need work, you want to do something, you want to be involved, you want to have purpose. Protecting the kids of our country, I mean, to me, that's...
So that comes down to, that is a very nuanced, and I wish it was a simple question to answer.
Okay.
But it ideally comes down to each individual state has their own set of requirements and things. And what you have is some are using, I know in Virginia, I was certified as a school resource officer. We had that, we would develop those programs, and that became part of it. But the issue we were having is that the people they would bring in were the guys that were close to retirement or have retired. And their mindset kind of shift is different. You bring in the guy that's overly young, they're not quite mentally there, experiencing it. So there's a balance between the experience and understanding.
Got to find
the right person for the role, which is what we do with the investigation development. You got to have these processes and interviews to find the right character, the right role for that, or you miss the mark. And that's kind of what you see here too. Florida does have a Guardian program and things like that where they go teach and learn from law enforcement agencies and can get certified. But then it's being able to find those people, keep them properly trained, and get them there. We've even seen in some instances in Florida, unfortunately, that with a trained police officer failed to act. And that's just due to lack of exposure to those things, because one of the things we tell about it is the body will never go where the mind hasn't been. And if they're not training and they're not prepping and they're not what-ifing these things and processing for these what-if bad moments, then you're never going to be able to respond accordingly to those situations. And we miss that. So it's a training and standard, and then a funding aspect of it, and you got to have the right people in place with the right vision, and then people that can execute that accordingly.
My very first football coach, Mike Flood at St. Mary's of Buffalo Grove, God rest his soul, would always say, what the mind can conceive, the body will achieve, and those who remain will be champions. And he might have gotten off of wooden or something, but as kids we were like, and I swear I think about that all the time.
And it goes and we teach situational awareness and all awareness, and that's a big part of it. Is you can't have situational without self-awareness. And if you're not what-ifing, or at least what-ifing a couple of things as you go through there, you don't got to do everything, because we tell people you get paralysis by analysis. But a simple thing, I'll end on that because I can get very cerebral on you. A thing called Hicks Law. So what Hicks Law states is the more options that you have at your disposal, the more things you process, the slower down your response to it. So that's where the 911 system, stop, drop, and roll, run, hide, fight, came around, developed over the years, because they were able to determine that under stress, the human brain can only recall 3 things. So when you go through that, you need to go through those what ifs. You're going through your scenarios. What are the most common things detriment to hear while we're in this studio? We need to determine those, and then that's what we process and build for. We can't go, this light goes here. Now, what are the most common things that we're going to maybe potentially see that can happen? And then you brain and you work through those scenarios with it. And as you said, if you go through it, work the scenario mentally, you will respond to it, because you're now creating that within those files of the brain, which will allow you to pull that and work from it. So,
Jim, this has been great, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh, great. I
All
appreciate
right,
you
man.
having me.
Peace and love to you. And
Thank you.
Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to you and your
same
family,
to
all
you.
right?
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, make sure you check out dailynewsnetwork.com. You'll see Jim Wenzel's profile. You see this conversation and so many others. By the way, you looking for veterans to hire still?
Always
looking for veterans to hire. So go to dailynewsnetwork.com and you'll see Jim's information. You'll be able to contact him through that way. So until next time, y'all stay safe out there and be cool. And, take a look around, enjoy life, but make sure you are aware of what's happening around you. Good advice?
Good advice.
Good advice. All right. Cheers, everybody, and Merry Christmas.